Welcome to my Build Your First Website course. I'm very excited for this course because we're going to get started straight from the beginning and learning by doing. We're not going to waste your time with fluff and theory, but you're going to learn as we go along. And I think from doing this, you're going to be surprised at how easy it is to learn how to build websites. During the course, we're going to be building this site right here, 1millionlines.com. Through doing that, you're going to learn the basic building blocks of HTML and CSS, and then we're going to get more advanced as the course goes along. And by the time we're done with the course, you'll be able to build any site you want and make it look any way you want. To get started, let's go ahead and download these three things. First, we need our text editor. For this course, we're going to be using Sublime Text 3. So make sure you have sublimetext.com/3 up here to get the most recent download. Then we need a web browser. I'm going to use Google Chrome throughout this course, and I suggest you do too. It has a lot of benefits in its developer tools, and it's very easy to use and powerful when you're making a website. Then finally, we're going to download Bootstrap. So go to getbootstrap.com. Bootstrap is a framework we're going to use to be able to build websites fast, and it gives us the benefit of being able to build responsive sites. So the site's going to look the same from your mobile device to your tablet to your desktop to your laptop. Okay? And then also it's going to help us keep a uniform look across browsers. So one of the challenges you face when you're building websites is that a site can look different from Google Chrome to Internet Explorer to Mozilla Firefox. Well, using Bootstrap helps us keep this uniform look across the three. So go ahead and download these three things, and then let's get started building our first site. A couple suggestions for you to get the most out of this course. First off, practice in short bursts. So don't try to consume this whole course in one day. Don't sit down and do it for multiple hours. I suggest, practicing in hour bursts. And what you can use is this site I use. It's eggtimer.com, and basically you can set timers, and it'll alert you when the timer's up. That way you have a time against you, so you try to learn as much in a small amount of window as possible, and then take a break for the day. Don't get burnt out. Stay excited about it, and I also suggest making a schedule that you'll stick to. So if you can lay aside 1 hour a day for a week, you'll have your first site out in a week. Number 2, go through the course one time with me and write in the code. That way you can see all the nuances of typing in the text editor, because if you forget like a certain caret or a comma or something, it can really change the code and mess up, and you'll start to become familiar with the strictness of writing in the code. But also don't worry, because it's not going to be that hard. I just want you to get muscle memory and feel for what it is in actually writing in your own code and seeing that you can reproduce the same results that I have. And then once you do that and you've completed the course, then you go in and make your own site. So you have this project that you love, this site idea. Maybe you want to create a site for yourself, or a business idea you have. You want to test it. So you go at it, you try to create it, and then use the videos and course materials to refer back to as references. And that's when the actual learning takes place. In the process of creating your own stuff, you start to create that muscle memory. You start to get in there and get your hands dirty, and you really learn by remembering and experiencing your own battles. Number 4, quantity over quality. So there's this story from the book, The First 20 Hours. And they were in this pottery class, and they split the pottery class into 2 groups. Group 1 was graded on how many pieces of pottery they could create over the course of the semester. Group 2 was graded on only 1 piece of pottery. Their grade, they had to pick their best piece of pottery, and that's what their grade was given. So they brought these 2 groups back together at the end of the semester, and you saw everybody's pottery on display. Well, the interesting realization was that all the people in the quantity group, their final pieces of pottery were so much better than the people that were graded on quality. And the lesson in this is that the learning comes in the process. So don't focus on worrying about messing up or anything. Just go at it, make mistakes. You can easily go back and fix them. That's one thing I really want you to think about in this course. Don't worry about messing up, make mistakes. And then just to hit this home again, repetition, repetition, repetition. Keep practicing, keep building sites. The more you do, the higher the quantity, the more this will become second nature, and you'll be busting out top quality sites in no time. It's really not hard. It just takes repetition and practice. So good luck with the course, guys. Let's get started in making our first website. Okay, guys, let's get started building our first website. So you should have downloaded Bootstrap. If you have not yet, then go ahead and click on Download Bootstrap. Click on it again, and it will get started down in here. And mine goes into my Downloads folder. So let's find this zip file. Let's unzip it. For Mac users, just double click on it. And you see this folder here, Bootstrap-3.1.1-dist. Let's rename this folder. And we'll rename it first-site. And make sure that this first site folder that you renamed has these 3 files in it. Now, in order to find this folder easily throughout the course, I'm going to go ahead and put it in my desktop. So I'm just going to drag it over to desktop. And now we have it in the desktop. As you can see, it's up there in the desktop. Now there's 2 ways to open this file in Sublime. You can drag it and let go for you Mac users, and it'll open in Sublime. Another way to do is to go ahead and open Sublime. And you can go to open. There also might be an open folder file depending on which version of Sublime you have, or open folder option. Click on it. And we're going to go to desktop, first site, open. So if it's not open, make sure it says open folder. And now we have our first site folder open here in Sublime, ready to work on the code. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back over here to Bootstrap, and the cool thing about Bootstrap is they have this whole getting started section. So it tells you what we have in this Bootstrap document. Ours is titled first site here. We have CSS, JavaScript, and fonts folders, as you can see here, and if you open them, they have the same options, same files as you see over here. Now, this is basically your Hello World, your basic template with Bootstrap. And what we're going to do is we're going to copy all this. And you can right click and copy it, or on Mac you can say Command C, PC, you can do Control C, and then we're going to switch over to Sublime Text, and we are going to right click on this first site up here and create new file. So we have a new file. Now paste it, Mac, Command V, PC, Control V, and you have your first document right here, and we're going to save it. You can go up here and File and click Save, or you can on a Mac say Command S, on a PC Control S. And in order to tell the browser that this is our root file, our home page, then we're going to name it index.html. So save it as that. We have our index file saved here, and I'm going to click Reveal in Finder. You could also go over to first site and you can see it here either way. And what you're going to do, they're the same document. So what you're going to do is you can right click and say Open with Google Chrome, or you can just double click on it and it's opened. And voila, we have our first site technically we've ever made. This Hello World is common among coding languages as your first application. So you have your first site, and next we are going to move on to building the 1 million line site. So we have our Hello World site up, but let's look at what all this stuff means in our first HTML document. So we have our HTML document here. This first line up here, doc type HTML, you always have to have the doc type starting the HTML document off, and there's different versions of HTML. Start at version 1, and currently we're in HTML5, so this is just telling the browser that we're writing in HTML5. Alright, so you have the doc type to start the HTML document off, and then you have the actual HTML document. And right here we have the header section. This header section is kind of like all the behind the scenes info. So to start off, we have these three tags right here. And don't worry about this for right now. Basically, it's one of the benefits of using Bootstrap. You know, these guys that created Bootstrap for us are professionals, and they know how to make sites look clear across all devices. And they put these pre-required tags in here for us. You can look them up if you want. See, this has to do with Internet Explorer. This right here has to do with the viewport when you get to like a mobile device, the initial scale. And so ignore that for now. We'll just trust them that they have it, and you'll be able to, you know, look this stuff up and understand it later. So the first one we're going to come to is this title tag here. And this title tag is what you see at the top of the page in the tab. So let's look at it so you can get a better feel. So we have Bootstrap 101 template, and let's go over to where we have. So you can see it now where it says Bootstrap 101 template. Okay, so just to show you, we can change this. So let's go over to Sublime, and you can just look. You don't have to do this as well. But we're going to take this, and we're going to say new title tag. All right, save it. Go over to Google Chrome, reload the page. See how it changes to new title tag up here? So we have that tag. This is also kind of appears whenever you do Google searches. You know, you see, like when you do a Google search, you see what the big link is. That's the title of the page. All right. Then next, we have this style sheet. So HTML is the structure of the page, and CSS is the style of the page. So without a CSS document, then you just have a standard looking website. You know, back in like the 80s and 90s where it was just text and, you know, there was no style to it, and you'll see that in the coming lectures. But for now, this is telling the browser how to get to the style sheet, the CSS document, from the current index document. So it's saying go into CSS, it says that right here, and then look for the bootstrap.min.css file. So if we go over here, go into CSS, and you have this bootstrap.min.css file. And we don't really have much content on the page right now, so that's why you don't see much of a style. But this is telling you where to go. And the cool thing about Bootstrap is it comes loaded with a bunch of predetermined styles that we can edit for, you know, to make the site look however we want it. Also, as said before, you know, the guys that created Bootstrap are professionals and know how to make sites look the same. You have a bunch of different browsers, okay? So you have Internet Explorer, you have Safari, you have Google Chrome, you have Mozilla Firefox. And basically, one of the biggest challenges is making your site look the same across different browsers. Well, this is some code that the Bootstrap guys have put in for us to make sure that our site looks the same across browsers. All right, so you have the head section, and we'll put other things in here throughout the course. But now you know what it is. It's all the behind the scenes info. And then the next major tag is the body section. Body is pretty much everything you see on the screen. What you see. All right, and a quick thing here. This is JavaScript. For now, don't worry about this, so ignore this as well. Okay, but what I want to get concentrated on is right here in the Hello World section, or where it says Hello World. And I've been talking about HTML tags. And here's the most common structure of an HTML tag. As you can see here, it starts off with the opening tag. So H1, this is the opening H1 tag. Then you have some content. In this case, it's Hello World. And that's what's going to show on the screen. And then you have the closing tag. So the only difference between the opening and the closing tag is this slash right here, backslash. And you're going to see this trend a lot. And basically what the H1 tag is, you know, tags help us style the document. So right here, the H1 tag would be like think about a newspaper. It'd be like the title of the newspaper, like USA Today. And then you have an H2 tag. All right, and that's what would be like the section title, whether it's sports or local or whatever. And then you have H tags all the way from H1 to H6. I usually don't get past H3, You also have paragraph tags. And this helps you, keep H1s, H2s, or like all H1s across your website looking the same, all H2s across your website looking the same, all paragraphs across your website looking the same. You can do that through CSS. You can also make certain H2s look a certain way and other H2s look a certain way. So let's get a feel for what H1s versus H2s and paragraphs look like so you can see it. Let's go over here to Sublime and we'll create an H2. And like I said, H1s are like the title of the newspaper, so they're the most important headline. And H2s are like the title of the section of the newspaper, so they're the second most important headline. So they're going to be a little bit smaller. A smaller header. All right. Now paragraph tag. This is a paragraph tag. All right, let's save that. Let's go over here, reload the page, and so you can see how hello world is big, smaller headers a little bit smaller, and then the paragraph tag is much smaller. All right, so now you can start to understand the basics of HTML and the HTML documents. And now let's get started on building the 1 million line site. So our site currently looks like this, and obviously we want it to get looking like this 1millionlines.com site. The cool thing about Bootstrap is they give us some templates to get us started this way. So we've so far used this basic template, and right here it says start with this basic HTML template or modify these examples. So we're going to go down to those examples they're talking about, and you can see them all right here. You have the starter template, Bootstrap theme, grids, and they give you templates for all types of different situations. So if you're a photographer, you have this cover template right here. You can put a picture in the background there. You see a lot of sites with this carousel slider at the top here. You got a blog template right here. So it's a positive in terms of if we want to build sites fast, we already have these templates to start with. So what we're going to do is find the template that looks most like our 1 million line site. Has a big picture area up here, navbar, 3 columns here. And for me, the one that looks the most similar to that is this jumbotron template right here. So I have this template and we want to grab the code from it. So click on it, and then what you're going to do is you're going to view page source. And then this is all the HTML source for that document right there, for that page right there. So let's grab all this and copy it. All right, we're going to go back over to our Sublime, and we're going to replace this index document. So I just pasted right over it. Let's save it. Now let's go back to Google Chrome. Let's reload this page. Remember, this is our index document that we just changed. All right. And as we can tell, this does not look like this page, but yet we have the same HTML. So right now is a good time to talk about HTML versus CSS. HTML, as said before, is the structure of a site. So you can see, it has the hello world. This is a template. Learn more. This heading right here is a little bit smaller than this hello world. Has some Latin here, view details. So let's go over to the HTML index.html file, and you can see that we have the biggest heading, hello world, H1 heading. Then you have paragraph, you have a link here. I'm sorry, you have a button there. Then you have an H2, and all these are H2, so you can see them looking the same. You can see all these paragraphs looking the same. And then you have these links. And HTML comes with some standard looks for each link, or for each tag, so H1 versus H2 and paragraphs, as you can see here. But yet we don't have it connected to any styling. And the reason why is, if you remember, you connect to a style sheet up here in the head section. All right, so we have this style sheet here, and it has the wrong path to the style sheet. So before we had it linked correctly in the last lesson, but here basically what it's saying, and anytime you start, if you don't start it out with HTTP, then you're giving it a relative destination, a relative path from the current file you're in. So the current file we're in is the index.html file, as you can tell up here, and it's in the first site folder, okay? Well, what this tells the computer or the browser right here, the two periods, is to say, and then the backslash is to say, go back one folder. So if we were to exit the first site folder, then we're going back, and we don't want that. And the way we have it structured, we'd be in the desktop. So basically we want to eliminate both of these because we want to stay in the first site folder. Now what it's saying is, in this first site folder, is there a dist folder? Which, no, there's a CSS, there's a fonts, there's a JS, and then there's an index.html file. So we're going to eliminate dist. Alright, now it's saying look for a CSS folder. Well, we have a CSS folder here when we're in the first site folder. And then it's saying go into the CSS folder, so let's open it. And then we have a bootstrap.min.css file. Yes, we do. Perfect. So that's the correct path. And by the way, we're not really using any of these in this course, so you can delete all these. All right. So have that saved. Now let's reload our site. And perfect. Looks a lot more like this site, right? There is one difference. See the spacing up here when you're on this versus when you're on our page? And there's a reason for that. So, by the way, this right here is called a comment. And you know, the left caret exclamation mark dash dash starts a comment, and then the dash dash right caret ends a comment. So everything in between there is, you know, what the comment is, and basically a comment just tells the computer to skip over it, and this is for human eyes only, this comment, to explain to yourself or maybe to another coder what you're doing right here. So what this is saying right here is this is custom styles for this template. So they created a jumbotron.css document that is going to be custom styles for that particular template. And this is how we edit Bootstrap. So this is all the standard Bootstrap stuff that comes with, you know, any Bootstrap page. And then what we're going to do is create our own custom CSS file here to edit it to make it look the way we want to. So this is kind of cool. It's like picking from a buffet, and we're like, hey, we like that part of the site, but we want to edit it, you know, and make it look a little bit different for ourselves. So let's go back over here, and I should have kept that view page source open. And let's look at their jumbotron.css file. So go ahead and click on that. And you can see this CSS document here. So we're going to go ahead and grab this, copy it, go back over to Sublime Text, and we're going to create a new file in the CSS folder, because this is where our CSS is. So new file. I'm going to paste this. I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it as custom.css just so you can have it in your brain knowing what type of CSS here. This is us customizing the Bootstrap CSS. So save it. Now we have to give it the right path to that custom.css. So once again, it's in the CSS folder, and we're still in the index.html file. So we have to give it a path from index.html file to this custom.css folder. So we want it to look for the CSS folder, go into it, and looking for custom.css. Save it, go over here, reload. All right, so now they're the exact same. That's awesome. Okay, so what did we learn in this lesson? Well, from this lesson, you now know how to grab any of these templates that you want, and so that you can start with any of these templates and start creating your custom site immediately and get them up fast. Then you also learned how to correctly connect the CSS paths, and in that process, you got to see the difference between having no CSS on a site, and it was just pure HTML with just text and everything lined up on the left, looking very 1990s internet-like. And then finally, you learned how to create your own custom CSS file, or any CSS file for that matter, so that you can edit these templates to make a site look any way you'd like to. And next, we're going to make our navbar up here look like the navbar here on the 1 million line site. So our site currently looks like this, and we want to change this top section up here to look more like the top section here for 1millionlines.com. So we could go in and hard code it here in this section, and you will be able to later once you learn what all this stuff means. But for now, I'm going to show you a shortcut and one of the other benefits of using Bootstrap. So what we can do is we can grab bits and pieces from different sites or from different templates here that Bootstrap provides us so that we can build sites faster. So what we're going to do is we're going to find this top section, and I like the top section here with the starter template. Okay, see it? A lot more similar to 1 million lines. We're just going to have to move this stuff over here. So a cool feature here with Google Chrome to learn about the HTML behind this is, well, first we've used the view page source, but we don't know, what part of this document is formatting this top section. So what we're going to do is we're going to inspect the element. And this inspect element feature here allows us to highlight over different parts of the HTML in the document and see, where it is on the screen. So we have the body, and we have this div here with a class of navbar, navbar inverse, and navbar fixed top. And so this is what we're looking for. So we have this div here, and then we want to find what we want to replace over here. So we have this same div, or this similar div here with a class of navbar, navbar inverse, navbar fixed top. All right. So class navbar, navbar inverse. We go over here and find it. A couple things to talk about here is, you see how there's these indentions? Well, one, the indentions allow us to see where a div or any HTML element that spans more than one line begins and ends easily. So you can easily see that they're indented in the same column, so that this is the start of that div, this is the end of that div. Also, with each indentation and each time something is inside of something else, so this div class container is contained within this div class navbar, navbar inversed, and navbar fixed top, you know that this indented one is a child element of this parent element right here. And this will come in handy later, and it does right now, but you'll see more of it throughout the course as you see that whatever you style in the parent element, also applies to the child element. So for now, let's grab this and copy it. And we're going to go to our code, and we're going to replace this div here. All right. So it's a lot of code to go through here, but it's a lot easier than you think. So first off, what is a div? Well, one awesome source for figuring out stuff about HTML and CSS is w3schools.com. So W3 Schools, div tag. Div tag defines a division or a section in an HTML document. Div tag is used to group block elements, format them with CSS. So a quick overview of divs. Basically, if you think about a newspaper and how you have different articles, and you have like a right column, or a column an article that may be a column on the right. You have an article that may be like the main feature article in the middle. Those are all sections of the newspaper. So think of divs like those sections that are styled differently. They're different sizes, different widths, different lengths. The letters, the words, the font might be different in each section. One picture may be bigger in one section than the other. That's a div. Then it says is used to group block elements. So what is a block element? And to format them with CSS. So let's go over here. Remember before when we took away CSS, all we have to do is mess up one thing here. And we go back over, and all the styling goes out. Well, you see here how project name, home, about, contact are all on different lines versus they're all on the same line here. That's because they're all block elements. And we'll go more into block elements and inline elements later, but a block element begins and ends with a new line, unless it's contained in a div and styled, which Bootstrap does for us. So, reload the page. Beautiful, we have that. All right, so we have it looking like this, and we want to move this stuff from here over to here. This is another benefit of using Bootstrap, is they have a lot of components that come with it that we can easily just piggyback to get them to do what we want. So let's look at components over here. And you see we can scroll down if we want, but also you can just look over here and let's find navbar, because that's the div class we're in. And you have this default navbar here. What we want to find is one component alignment. So currently, it's to the left. Well, we want to move it to the right. So let's highlight that navbar right. And what do we want to move to the right? So we can inspect the element to see that. So we have this whole section here. Nope. All right, so we want to move all this to the right. So UL, class, nav, navbar, nav. So we want to give it another class of navbar right. Take away that period there and reload the page. Boom. So everything's moved over to the right now. Now we have project name here. So it's right here under navbar header, a class navbar brand, project name. We want to change that to 1 million lines. Save that. Awesome, we have that. So we have 1 million lines, and then we want to change these to the right links. So let's look at the links. We have who we are and get involved. And we're not going to worry about record lines for now. Who we are, get involved. And we can just eliminate this. All right, awesome. Let's go here, save it, reload the page. We have this exactly as we want it. And a couple things to talk about here is we've pretty much gone over everything here. You have the navbar header here, and we just messed with the 1 million lines, and we'll get more into linking there. And then you have your right side over here that we went over. This right here is just for the responsive part of the website. So basically, see how as we move this in, eventually who we are and get involved disappears and this button shows. That's that section. So if we deleted that, reloaded the page, we moved it in, then that wouldn't show anymore. Okay, so that's just a cool feature of Bootstrap that helps our site be responsive. So when it goes, someone's viewing it in mobile, then it's good in mobile. So it looks good across mobile, desktop, and laptops and device and like iPads and stuff as well. All right, so we have this top section looking as we want it, and next we'll get to work on this main section right here. Okay, so we changed a lot of stuff in the last lesson, covered a lot. So I want to take this time to go more in depth and explain what divs are, what block elements are, inline elements are, and then unordered lists versus ordered lists, because you're going to see a lot of these when you're building websites. First off, if you noticed right here, we have this little section highlighted versus you don't see that anywhere on this site. So that's just a quick fix that we need to do. and see where it says class active, just delete that. So take out class active. Save it, go back over, reload the page, and we're all good. Okay? All right, now I want to go more into divs. So we talked about divs last time and said that they're like, you know, newspaper articles and for a newspaper, and that they help, you know, create sections of the site so that you can style them. So I want to give you a visual of what a div is. So what we're going to do, and you know, I showed you this last time, is we're going to highlight this div here, the class of jumbotron, and over here is all the HTML on the site. And the cool thing with this inspect element is over here on the right is all the CSS for the site. So you can see the CSS coming from that bootstrap.min.css file that we've linked to here, and you can see what line it's on. So remember how we edited the body in the custom.css file? Well, you're going to see it here. Body, custom.css, line 2. Line 2. So that's cool. You can see where the stylings coming from on your page. So let's highlight this jumbotron div class here, and you'll see border. We're going to give it a border just so you can get a visual. Border 1px solid. Okay, so you see it highlighted, see it outlined here. Now let's do this div as well. We got a div here with a classic column medium. You can say border 1px solid, so you can see this div. All right, and remember we talked about earlier about parent elements and how everything within, you know, like when you style a parent element, then it's all its child elements get affected. But for now, I want to show you this. So we have this jumbotron, and then we have this container, which is within the jumbotron. So let's give this a border. And anytime I make this, you make changes over here on the right. This is just temporary, so you can see them immediate on the site. When you reload the page, they'll all go away, which you'll see in a second. All right, so you got this container here. See, it's within the jumbotron class, but the CSS, the styling of the container, all that the container is doing on this site is keeping everything within a width of 100, at this screen width of 1,170 pixels. Okay, so you have this div with a classic container here, and so everything within it, the H1, the paragraphs, are all within that width. You also, if you noticed, within the navbar, we're going to have to do one border, our border 1px solid. We're going to have to do white so you can see it. See how it's lining up? And you also have another one down here. All right, so basically what this container is doing is keeping everything in line. You see how all these boxes line up? So that keeps it nice and styled. You don't have some pushed off to the left, pushed off to the right. And we'll go ahead and reload the page, and I'll show you what happens if we put it outside of that container. So we have this jumbotron here. I'm going to put some text outside of the container. Paragraph. This is outside container. All right, so you can see how it's now outside of that this line here, and you know it's not a child element of that div with the classic container, so therefore it doesn't, you know, listen to its rule of width 1170 pixels. So then let's go ahead and change that back, get that out of there. And we talked and I showed you in the last lesson what it looks like if we take away the CSS. All right, so we talked about block elements and that divs help style block elements. You start to see here that list items, li, it's a list item, is a block element. So you can see the who we are, and they get involved are on separate lines. H1s are block elements, paragraph tags are block elements, H2s, all headings. Okay, but you see these two on the same line. The reason for this is buttons, or they're what we call inline elements. So buttons an inline element. A link, which is also an anchor tag or an A tag, is an inline element. And you can see it here in effect. See how there's a list item and an anchor tag here, and they're on, they're on one line. So you can have inline elements with block elements. So block elements go to the next line, inline elements can be on the same line. And that's why you see this button and this anchor tag here with 1,000,000 lines on the same line here. So, and then this right here, UL, is what we call an unordered list. So it says unordered list is starting here, and there's 2 list items in the unordered list, 1, 2, and then the unordered list closes here. And unordered list is like when you're in Word and you're doing bulleted lists, okay? And then the opposite of that, or the substitution of that, would be an ordered list. So it's like when you're in Word and you're doing numbered list. List item 1. List item 2. So you can see list item 1, list item 2, numbered list, unordered list, and once again list items are still block elements, so they go to the next line. Alright guys, so I'm glad we got to have some time to go into that. And next, well, first of all, let me put all this back so that no one's confused. Boom. Make this right. So we should be good to go. The cool thing as we learn about divs and block elements and inline elements and how to style them in the coming lessons, that you're going to be able to make these divs look however you want them. So you're going to be able to make nav bars that look however you want, and you're going to have increased flexibility for all the different types of sites you can create. So we've learned about divs, block elements, inline elements in this section. Learned about the container class here in Bootstrap, and next we're going to start creating this top section to look like the 1,000,000 line site here. Let's start building and formatting this top jumbotron section here to look like the 1,000,000 line site. So since we know we're just going to copy the text from here, all this, what we can do is we could type it in, or we're going to go ahead and take a shortcut and right click view page source, and then we know that it's in that jumbotron class and it has to be within the container, so it's within the lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab this h1 tag and this paragraph tag right here. Alright, so grab that, copy it, go over to Sublime, replace this h1 and this paragraph tag. So what we're doing is we're just putting in the correct text for the h1 and the correct text for the paragraph. So let's save that. Come over here and look. Alright, so we have the right text now. So a couple things to look at in the code that we haven't seen before. These BR tags right here are line break tags, so it's just saying it to go to the next line. And you can see that it goes to the next line after inspire and after 1,000,000. See, next line, next line. It hasn't gone all the way to the edge over here, but we've told it, just to enter and give it a line break and go to the next line. Another one is these strong tags right here. And that's basically saying that whatever's in the strong tag, so you have the opening strong and the closing strong tag here, is going to be bolded. It's an HTML tag for bold. So as you can see, hour of code bold, code.org bold. All right. Next, what we want to do is we want to center all of this here. See how this is all centered? We want to center this as well. So let's inspect this element. And we've played around in this area before. We have the HTML over here, the CSS over here, and then the cool thing is whatever is highlighted. So right now we're highlighted on that H1. We can just go over here and see what CSS we need to do, or we can experiment with CSS rules to see how it affects this stuff. So for instance, I know that text align is what we want here. So we have text align center. See, and you can see it live here. See the changes, it's all gotten centered. But right now we're just highlighting this H1 tag here. What we want is everything, so I'm going to cancel this out by unclicking this. We want everything in the jumbotron class to be centered. You can see everything, H1, paragraph, button, image, which we'll add later, is all centered. So we want to highlight this whole class here, jumbotron. We can go over here and we can say text align center. Looks good. That's what we want. So now remember, once we reload this page, it's not going to save it. So we'll reload it here just to show you. It's all going to get reset. Boom. But we know that we wanted the whole jumbotron, everything in it centered. So to do that, let's write our first CSS rule from scratch. And in order to say this, basically what we want to do is say any div with a class of jumbotron, we want all the text in it centered. So to say that, say dot jumbotron. So that's saying any HTML element. In this case, we are calling divs, or we are giving divs a class of jumbotron. But any HTML element, class of jumbotron, we want all its text aligned in the center. So save that, go back over to your site, reload, and it's all centered. Beautiful. The next thing we want to do is update this button here. And see how it's red here and we have it blue? Well, as we talked about before, there's a bunch of cool CSS components and principles that come with Bootstrap, and this is one of them. So we see buttons here. Actually, I'm sorry. We need to go over here to CSS and see buttons here on the right. It's going to scroll us down to buttons, and you can see options. Use any of the available button classes to quickly create a styled button. So you can see the different colors. And see how it says primary right here? Well, we can read the code here and say button, type button, class button. So you see this class button primary. And you can tell that that's the right button, one, because it's second in this line here. It's the second button, but it also has primary right here. So that's what it's going to show. So that's button primary. That's what we have right now. And we can go over to Sublime Text and see that. See, we have the class, a button with a class of button primary right here. And we want it to be red. So we see this red button right here, danger, and we can see the class is button danger here. So let's change this to danger. Save it. Reload the page, and we have a red button. Alright, so we just introduced you to creating CSS rules, and I want to take the time now to talk more about CSS and introduce you to it. Okay, so we made our first CSS rule in the last lesson. Now I want to talk to you about what CSS is. CSS is also known as, or CSS stands for, Cascading Style Sheets. And there's different ways to implement CSS into our HTML documents. We've already talked about linking to external style sheets. This is what we've been doing with the custom.css file. And then the other way, so let's go ahead and do, I'm going to do, another way is you can do internal style sheets in the header section, and you can just follow along here to see. So we can do style here. This is an internal style sheet. You'll also see the text align centered there. Or another way you could do it is to give the style inline. So we'll just go to this div with a class of jumbotron, say style equals text align center. So those are the three different ways you can implement CSS into your website. Now, it's called cascading because you can have a number of different style sheets, as we have, two different ones up here, cascading into one virtual style sheet. So let me show you what I mean by that. So remember how we had jumbotron, text align, center right here, okay? Now I want to give all font in jumbotron a color of, actually this will be easier represented. So we have this button here. We have a button large with a font size of 18 pixels, and that's in the Bootstrap document. So we have the Bootstrap document, and we have our custom.css document here. So I'm going to create a button large class, and I'm going to give it a font size of 24 pixels. Okay? So it's currently 18 pixels. Now I want to change it to 24. See how it got bigger? And now that 18's marked out, and now it's 24 pixels. Alright. So this right here is saying 18 pixels. This is saying 24 pixels. Now, what if we created this style sheet? No, get out of there. We don't want that margin bottom there. So we want to do dot button LG. We want to give it font size 36 pixels. Now save it. Come over here. It's gotten even bigger, 36 pixels. So it's cascading down, and this is saying button large should be 18 pixels, so it has that as a rule. Goes through that document. Oh, then it goes to the custom CSS document saying it should be 24 pixels. So now at this point, button large 24 pixels, and then it comes to our internal style sheet and says 36 pixels. So let me show you something right here. Remember, this style sheet has it as 24 pixels. And currently it's 36, so save that. Now it's back down to 24 pixels. So whatever it reads through last, because it's cascading, is what is the final CSS rule that stands in place. Alright, so let's put this back. And actually, you can see now why we can overwrite rules and that Bootstrap has pre-done for us in their CSS documents. So I think actually we want this font size here for button large to be 36 pixels. So we're going to take this out. We're going to change this to 36 pixels. Alright, so we've gone over cascading of CSS, and now I want to talk about specificity. I know, not an easy word to say, but basically, as we're saying, all these different style sheets are coming in, and all these different styles are coming in, and they have the cascading nature of it, but also there's specificness of the rules. So, in other words, if I say here that jumbotron, all the text in it should be red. All right. So let's come over here. It's now 36 pixels, and all the text is red. Okay. So everything in the jumbotron, or the div with the class of jumbotron, text is going to be red. Okay. So now I can come over here and say, okay, well, I don't want, this paragraph to be red. I want it to be blue. So, jumbotron, the paragraph in the jumbotron, I want the color to be blue. All right, so now it's blue. So this blue overrides this red because this is a more specific CSS rule. So, this is for any HTML element within a, parent element that has a class of jumbotron is red, but this is saying, okay, well, to be more specific, we want any paragraph that is, a child element of a parent element with the class of jumbotron to be blue. So that's more specific, so that wins. And then remember earlier how I told you there's another way to do inline styling. This is the most specific you can get. So we're going to come here. We're going to say color equals green. And so now we should see this turn green. There you go. So specificity is kind of hard to wrap your head around, and there's a lot of people that program out there and they don't even know what it means and what the scores are on the specificity of a CSS rule, and they get along fine because you can always see like, hey, did it turn green? No, okay, I'm not doing something right. Let me make it more specific. But this gets you a starting point to see the more specific you make a rule, the higher priority it's going to have. So you understand a lot more CSS than most people do that build websites right now. So let's turn all this back to what we want it to be. Save that. Let's take out this blue. Let's take out this color here. And everything should be back to where we have it. Awesome. And I wanted to teach you about cascading and specificity because, well, now you know all the different ways to implement CSS into your website, but you can see, like, in order to put it in line or put it at the top of the page, say you wanted to create, like if you put it in line, say you wanted to create another paragraph with that same styling rules. Well, you'd have to then copy those styling rules, the CSS rules, into the next paragraph. Or say you wanted to create a new document, link to another document in the website. When you have your style sheet up here, you'd have to copy whatever style was up here in the top. So the most effective way, and the way I recommend to put in your CSS into a website, is through an external style sheet like we're doing here. And through explaining specificity to you, you can solve the problems of, hey, I thought this paragraph was going to be blue and it's red. Why is that? So you can look into the specificity ranking of that CSS rule and learn to fix it. So I recommend putting all your CSS in external style sheets. As your site gets more complex and you want to make, one major change or one minor change, say, you had all your style here in the different paragraph tags, the different H2 tags, and you wanted to make one change and make the text just a little bit bigger. Well, you'd have to go back into every H2 tag that you had style on and change it. Or you'd have to go into every page if you had it in an internal style sheet and change it. Whereas if you just have it in one external style sheet that all your documents link to, then all you have to do is make one quick little change right here. You can change padding bottom to 25 pixels and boom. It goes uniform across the whole site and across all the elements that pertain to that styling rule. So we've learned about CSS. Let's move on to making this section look more like our 1 million line site. All right, so if you ever heard of Steve Jobs, you know that fonts and typography is important to the look and design of a product. And we want to make, cool, awesome looking sites. So I'm going to teach you how to bring in any font that you want to. So over here, you can tell that this top section is a different font, or this H1 here is a different font than the paragraph. And so what we're going to do is we're going to change this font here as well. So I have this font called Arvo. And this is one cool thing that Google gives us, well, one of many, is their Google Fonts section. So we have Arvo here. We're going to scroll to the bottom. And by the way, before I do that, Google gives us a bunch. So you could go to Google Fonts for whatever project you're working on and look at all the different types of font that they have here. So let's just go ahead and show you. So I'm going to find Arvo here. You click on it. And we want to use just the normal. So go there and let's say use. It's going to take you to this page. So you have normal 400 right here. And it's going to show you how to bring it into your document. So I'm going to link to it up here. I'm sorry, we're going to copy that link there. We're going to go over to the index, and you want to put it above your CSS document since we're going to refer to it in the CSS document. So I'm going to say this is our Google Arvo font. Remember, this is a comment. And I'm going to paste that there, save that. Okay, now we go back to Google. We added this code to our website, and now we want to integrate the fonts into our CSS. So copy this, and we want it to be for the H1 tag in this div up here with the class of jumbotron. So dot jumbotron, H1 tag, font family Arvo. I'm also going to put courier new in here, or actually we'll do courier, and boom, and now we should be able to go over to the site, and yes, you see a different font here. Alright, so this is different. You can also see from the site that this is different as well, and I know that these are the same fonts here, so we're going to edit this top section here. So inspect element. And I want to do this whole unordered list because if we add a link, we want it to have that same font. So this unordered list with a class of nav. So to do that, let's say unordered list, class of nav. Oops, sorry. Copy it, paste it, save it, reload the page, and now you have that font up there. So this is saying unordered list with a class of nav, font family Arvo. If that doesn't load correctly, go to courier. If that doesn't work, go to serif. All right, now just to show you, you can combine CSS rules. So since this is just font family here, and we know that they're going to have the same font type here, what we can do is we could just do this. Just go boom. And so this is how you combine selectors. So this is a selector, all, unordered list with a class of nav, and this selector, all H1s and any div with a class of jumbotron, or any HTML element with a class of jumbotron gets this CSS rule right here. So we should see them stay the same here, and we're good. All right, so now you know how to bring in custom fonts into your site, and next we'll move on to continue building this top section here. To start this lesson off, I want to change this font size up here real quick to be a little bit smaller like this is. So I learned how to change this in the last lesson. I found this UL class here, and I want to give it a font size of, I think, 13 pixels. Yeah, that looks good. All right, so let's go over here, CSS, bust this out real quick. Our unordered list with a class of nav, font size 13 pixels. Boom. Reload the page, and we're good. All right, better there. And now for this lesson, I want to talk about spacing and getting this, to have better spacing and look better like this is. You can see the differentiation in the H1 and the paragraph, and it's just easier on the eye. So in order to do that, we're going to talk about the box model. Earlier, I showed you that all divs are boxes. Well, what I didn't tell you is that every HTML element is a box. You can see this H1 here, see this paragraph here. So box model, It's comprised of 4 different things. You have the HTML element itself, then you have the padding, you have the border, you have the margin. And it helps with spacing so that you can create your site to make it look however you want it. So let's give it some padding, 10 pixels. Let's give it some border. We'll go 5 pixels solid. Let's give it some margin, 10 pixels. Alright, and also just to give you a visual, we'll give you background color gray. Alright, so what does all this mean? So we can come down here and check out this HTML element, this H1's box model here. The blue here is the HTML element itself. Then you have the padding, which we gave 10 pixels. All around the HTML element is the green. All right. Then the border is highlighted here in a yellow, but we made it black in the actual CSS. And then you have the margin, which is orange, 10 pixels all the way around, represented by orange here. So inside of the border, you have padding and you have the HTML element. And outside of the border, you have the margin. The reason why they do this is sometimes, say you wanted the spacing here. You had this, and you did want to give it this gray background. But you didn't know whether to use margin or padding. And see how this kind of comes up, right next to the line. It doesn't look too good, so we wanted to give it a little padding. So by doing, we wanted to give it some spacing, but we wanted to, get this background color. We didn't want it to be spacing up here. We wanted it to be within this background color. So we use padding for that because padding is within the border. So it'll increase that background color. And then margin is outside of the border. All right. So you see the difference between padding, margin, border. Let's reload this page. And what we want to do is get some spacing here. So we see that this is higher up than it is here. So let's inspect that. You can see here, we have this H1 scrolled over, that there's margin to the top. So we could eliminate that. But also, I remember from our CSS document earlier that we did a padding of 50 pixels to the top. And the jumbotron right here from Bootstrap's document gave us a padding of 48 pixels. Okay, so it's keeping within the background stuff. What I'm going to do just to make this simple is go with making the margin top here 0 pixels. All right, so we pushed it up. And that was for the H1 of the Jumbo class. And we're going to say margin top 0 pixels. And the reason why I showed you the 3 different things between margin top here, we could mess with the padding of the jumbotron or the body, is just to show you that there's always different ways to achieve the same design style. And they each have their pluses and their minuses, and sometimes it doesn't really matter. So in this case, we're going to stay with making the H1 style a margin top of 0 pixels. Okay, and I introduced you to before, a way to say margin 5 pixels, and it would do it all around. See how it's all the orange is the same width all the way around. And we did it with padding too. So now all the green is the same width all the way around. And you can also do 2 variables, or 2 numbers here. So 20 pixels, 10 pixels. And now you see how the green is thicker up top than it is on the left and the right. So the first number of 20 pixels is top and bottom padding. And then the second number is left and right padding. So you have 10 on the left and the right, you have 20 on the top and the bottom. You can also do 4 variables. So, and when you do 4 variables, it reads like a clock. So you start up at the top at 12, and it's 20 pixels. Then you go to the right, it's 10 pixels, 3 o'clock. Then you go to the bottom, 6 o'clock, and it's 30 pixels. And then you can see the most screen over to the left, 40 pixels at 9 o'clock. All right. So those are different ways to implement, margin or padding, and they both, get implemented the same way. So you can see the effects with margin now. 20, 10, 30, 40. So let's take that out. But in this case, we're just going to say margin top, because you can also do them singularly. Margin top, margin bottom, padding bottom. So we're going to do it singularly. Margin top, 0 pixels. So let's go over here. Margin top, 0 pixels. Reload the page. We're good here. All right, so now I want some spacing down here below. So I want to, let's try 30 pixels. No, we need more than that. Let's go with 50 pixels. So 50 pixels. And then for the paragraph, I want to have, and we'll go ahead and do it for all paragraphs because this is going to be a paragraph as well, as you can tell, and we want spacing between that and the image. So let's go and say margin bottom 30 pixels. See what that looks like. Yeah, that should be about perfect. So margin bottom 30 pixels, and we also had dot jumbotron p and I did that quick change there, 50 pixels here for the H1s. And now reload the page. All right, all looks the same. Check out here. You can see the cascading coming into effect as our custom style sheet overwrites the Bootstrap provided margin bottom CSS property for jumbotron p. All right, so you learned about the box model and the difference between margin, padding, and how to apply margin and padding in different ways to HTML elements. And we have the site looking good here. Now let's go ahead and add in the images that we're missing to get this top section done. Now let's go ahead and bring in these images and finish off this top section. So the first image we want to bring in is this code.org logo right here. And if the 1 Million Lines site changes at all, then you can always find these logos and the images down in the lesson source files. If the sites change, they're not on here. But I'm going to show you how to grab them off sites as well. So we're going to go to this logo. We're going to right click on it, and we're going to save image as. And we want to go into our desktop because that's where our first site file is. And then we want to create a new folder in that first site file called images. Create. So you have this images folder now, and I'm just going to go call it code.png. All right. And we're going to save it. Now, to bring it into our site here, we're going to go over to Sublime. And we're going to put this image. Now you're going to see a new tag here, an image tag, img. And an image tag is interesting. Well, first of all, let me put this. Image tag is interesting because it has no closing tag. It's just one tag, an opening tag. And to tell the computer or the browser where the image is, we use this source attribute here. So it's just like before. it's very similar to this href over here, where we tell the browser how to get to the CSS document. It's a similar path. So what we're doing is we're still in this index.html file, which is in the first site folder. So to get to that image, we look for the images folder, and we go into it, tell the browser to go into it, and then the file is called code.png. So let's save that. And nice, now you see code.png. And there's some other things we can add here. You see how different tags, we've used classes, you see role here, we have source. These are all called HTML attributes for that tag. So the image has two other attributes that are important. The first one is title. So we're going to call it code.org logo. And this title is what shows if you scroll over the image for long enough. So I'll show you here in a second. The other one is alt. And this is what's going to show if the image loads improperly. Like if you've ever seen a site and the images are broken and there's text within the square, then that's what was in their alt attribute code. So we're going to reload the page. Scroll over the image so you can see code.org logo. Exactly what we put in here for title. So different HTML tags have different attributes to go along with it. These are the three important ones for image. You can also use height and width, and you can check out W3 Schools image tag to see all the different attributes you can use, and you can do that with all types of different HTML tags as well. All right, so we have this here. Now we need to get the right background. So we're going to go over here and we're going to inspect this element. Notice the difference between right clicking on this and we have the option to save the image, copy the image URL, copy image, then right clicking on this and we don't have that option. That's because this background image right here, or this is a background image, and it's in the CSS. So you can tell the jumbotron covers that whole area, and see they have this background attribute right here. So we're going to right click on this, and now you see these options. So we're going to say open link in new tab, which will open the image, and you see the image here. So let's go ahead and save this image. I'm going to save it just like the other one in the images folder, and this one's going to be hero_image.jpg. So we save that. Now we're going to come over here to our custom CSS, and remember it was a background image for the div with the class of jumbotron. So we're going to say background image, and for this, we had the href for the CSS documents, we had the source for the image. When you're doing a background image in CSS, it's URL, and where it's similar as the other ones, we're going to give it a path to get to the image from this custom.css document. So we're no longer in this index.html document. We're now in this custom.css document, which is in the CSS folder. Now remember earlier I talked about two dots and this backslash escapes, and I forgot, I gotta put this around here, put quotations. Two dots and this backslash escapes from the current folder. So it's saying get out of the current folder, which is CSS. Now we're in the first site folder. So now we want to tell it to look for the images folder, and then the hero image.jpg. That should do it. Let's make sure. Beautiful. Very nice. So we have the image there. And what we need to fix now is we need to fix this text here. So let's look at it. Now we're going to make it white, and we could do the H1 and tell it to go white, and we could do the paragraph and tell it to have font color of white, or as we know from now, we can say, well, we want all the font in the div with the class of jumbotron to be white, so just say color white. Boom, we have that. So let's go over here and change that in here. Jumbotron, color, white, save. Now, some other things. Everything looks pretty good there. Also, notice the thinness in the font here. See how thin that font is? There's just a little, bolder here. So this is called font weight. So we're going to go to this paragraph and we're going to give it a font weight. Whoops. We're going to give it a font weight of 100. Now I see how thin it is. Beautiful. So give it that. All right. And one thing I want to do is I want to bring this in a little bit, and because I don't like how wide it is. Remember how we talked earlier, so this jumbotron, this div with a class and container contains, this h1, this paragraph with a link here, and this image here, and it gives it a width of 1170, okay? Well, these h1s don't have a specified width, and the paragraphs don't have a completely specified width of exactly what it is, so it listens to the container. So it says it should be a width of 1170, and I want to push this in a little bit. So I'm going to give it a padding. Let me make sure it doesn't already have a padding here. All right, we haven't given it any padding. I'm going to give it a padding top 0, because it's already that way. But to bring it in some, to push it in on the side some, I'm going to give it a padding of 20 pixels. Let's give it a little bit more, 40 pixels. We'll go 50 pixels. That way this is nice and on its own line. And so what it does is it pushes in, since, the width of this document, of this div element here is specified by the container. What the padding does is goes in on that, so it pushes the text in a little bit. And margin would have done the same. So either one, but I'm going to use padding. So we're going to push the sides in here. Everything looks good. And now, let me write that in. What did we say, 50 pixels? So push it in, and then we're going to change this image right here. So we'll go over here, we'll save this image as, and we got, I'm going to say top logo, just so we don't have to write as much. You can name it whatever you want. Top logo, save. So we go up here, right here where we have 1 million lines, and we're going to do an image tag just like we did. src equals, remember, we want to get it from index to images, so we're going to do images dash top underscore logo dot png. And we're going to do alt, and this is what shows if it doesn't load properly, 1 million lines. And we're going to do title 1 million lines. All right, now one thing you'll notice is that these two are inline elements, because we save it. So the link and the image, same line. Another thing is, you see how there's .png here, and in our CSS it was .jpeg. The difference between PNG is PNGs have transparent backgrounds. So see how behind that 1 million lines in white, and how behind this code.org logo here, you can see the background behind it. that just means they have transparent backgrounds. JPEGs are squares. And you'll see that more as you work with images, if that doesn't make sense right now. But it will the more you work with images. All right, so we have the site completely looking up top as we want it. Great job. And now we're going to move on and start doing this bottom section here. So we're done coding out and designing and styling this top section. It's great for a landing page. It's clean, simple, and has a clear call to action. In this lesson, I want to talk about Bootstrap's grid system so we can understand what's going on down here. And through understanding that, then we'll be able to create any sort of layout we want for any site we want. And for the best way to understand this grid system is to see it in action. So I've gone ahead and created this grid file right here. So I'm going to open it in the browser. All right. So Bootstrap is based on a 12-column grid system. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, it means that we can create divs that are as skinny as 1/12 the width of the page, all the way to ones that are the full width of the page. And with the ability to do this, it allows us to create layouts of any type. So let's look at this here. Each of these are rows. We have a row here, row, row, row. Now this top row consists of 12 divs that are 1 column in width. All right, so each div's 1/12 of the page in width. All right, now we have this next row. Right here, you have one div with 2/3 of the page and one div with 1/3 of the page. So this is saying here that we gave this column a width, or I'm sorry, we gave this div a width of 8 columns, and then here we gave this div a width of 4 columns. So you can see it now, 3 divs of equal width, each has 4 columns of width. And then here, 2 divs of equal width, so each are half the page, each are 6 columns of width. So with this, as long as you make the divs add up to 12, you can create an infinite number of combinations. So, you know, we could do 8 and 4, we could do 3, 3, 3, and 3. You got 4, 4, 4, 6, 6, 6. All right. Now there's 2 rules we got to follow here that are really important. First of all, each of these rows have to be within a container div. So you can see each of these rows are within this container div here, and even easier to see, we'll go over to Sublime. So each of these rows are within this div class container. Now, rule number 2, only columns may be immediate children of rows. So each of these are columns, and they all have to be immediate children to rows, and only columns can be immediate children. So let's go over here and look at our code here. Yep, each of these columns are immediate children of this row. And remember, when you do these indentions so you can see the child elements. So it keeps it organized for us. I mean, they would still be child elements if they weren't indented here, but this just helps us see it faster. These 2 are child elements, immediate child elements of the row. And these 3 and these 2 are as well. So what happens if we don't follow that rule? Let's put in a paragraph here. This is not a column, but is an immediate child element of that row. Save that, reload the page. Doesn't look like that big of a deal, but if you notice here, the text right here is outside this line that this text seems to follow here. The reason why is because of this container, and we're not following the rules here, so this paragraph pushes outside of that container. So, and to make it even worse, say we just said this makes it worse. Now it really looks messed up. So let's look at this, and maybe you're like, well, I want this, you know, this paragraph to be above this row here and to be a span across. Well, we've kind of already, or we have already done with this header here, but let's go ahead and show you what it looks like if we do that. So let's take all this out, and you can just make this paragraph right here. This is within the container, but outside the row. All right, so nice. Now it's all on this line. Okay, so what does all this mean? Basically, you can use these to make any layout you want. So you can see here, these are 3 columns, or 3 divs of equal width, which ends up looking like columns here. See, all 3 divs equal width here. So what they've done here is they've done 3 columns, 3 divs with a width of 4 columns. That's exactly what we have here. Just looks a little different because the padding and the background, or I'm sorry, because of the background and the border. So now you can see it. And then you can take those columns and style them even more with CSS so they look as good as these do, which we will be doing in the following lessons. And for those of you out there that might be following along and picking this up quick and have a couple questions, I know what you're thinking. So first off, you're wondering, well, Ryan, you said that divs are block elements earlier in the course, so how are they all on the same line here? Because they should be going to a new line. That's a great question. I'm glad you picked up on that because that means you're learning fast. For now, just take it as, this is one of the benefits of using Bootstrap so that we can build things fast. And what we will do is we'll go over this later in the advanced parts of the course. But for now, Bootstrap has already taken care of the code for us. We're going to rely on them. They're professionals. Hundreds of sites use this, and this is a big benefit of using Bootstrap and being able to build sites fast. Then number 2, you've noticed on all these divs that we've been typing in that the class has column and a number, but it also has this MD right here. Has it on that site, also has it here, and it has it on all these divs we've made here. For now, ignore that. We'll also go over that later in the course when we talk about building responsive sites. So great job in this lesson. Let's move on to designing this section right here. In this lesson, we're going to bring in the content in this bottom section here, and we're going to talk about links. So let's go ahead and grab content here. We have students, educators, and sponsors. Let's come over here to your index, and let's change each of these headings to students, educators, sponsors. And to save time, we'll just go ahead and grab this paragraph for each one. All right, then we have start learning, join the initiative, and give support. Remember we learned about buttons earlier. Start learning. Join the initiative. Give support. And this crazy looking text right here is HTML for these double arrows you see right here. So obviously, like, we have a bunch of carets all over HTML code, as you've seen throughout this course. And so certain symbols have a very specific HTML code that creates these. So we have the text we want in here. Let's save this. Reload the page. Beautiful. So we have all the text we want. Now we want to be able to link to certain pages. So we're going to talk about links now. First off, you see this tag right here. Anytime you want to make a link to another page, then you have this A tag. So A tags, they have the opening tag, These are links. And then you have the closing tag. In this lesson, we're going to learn about Google Forms, which is an awesome free tool to get feedback from site visitors and to make your site interactive. So let's say, for instance, I wanted to know when a student came to my site and was interested in participating in 1 million lines. So assuming, or as long as you have a Google account, you can go to drive.google.com. And we're going to create a form over here. So create a form. Just for ease, we're going to choose the default form, and it's going to be called Student Signups. All right. You can do different question types. We're going to put in text, and we're going to say, please leave your email address and we'll let you know when we launch. Required question. Thank you for being interested in 1 million lines. Done. Now we're going to say send form. We're going to grab this link right here. So you can do Command-C to copy it. Now we're going to go over to Sublime. We'll just go ahead and put it right here. And let's give it a target attribute of _blank so that we'll open a new window, save it, go over to Google Chrome, reload our page, click on this, opens a new window, student signups. Please leave your email address and we'll let you know when we launch. Submit. Thank you for being interested in 1 million lines. So now we can come back over here, and yeah, I should have put it on this link over here. Sorry about that. But now in my Drive, you have, since you created this form, Google Drive's automatically created this responses spreadsheet for you. So click on this, and you should have one response. Here we go. Timestamp, email address ryan@masteracademy.us. And we'll go up here and enable notification rules. Notify me at whatever your email address is when any changes are made. We'll say anything on this sheet is changed, and we'll say a daily digest. Say a user submits a form too. Save it, and now each day you'll get a digest of whoever submitted that form. So this is an awesome way to get feedback. If, say, you have a new idea for a site, or maybe you want to create like a contact me form for clients, you can do this with Google Forms as well. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to include these sweet looking icons here in our site. So what this is called is Font Awesome. And technically, it's not a font. It's actually a set of scalable vector icons. But Font Awesome is what it's called. Let's go ahead and download it. And what we're going to do is we're going to just rename this to just Font Awesome. So rename it, enter, and we're going to insert it into our fonts folder here. And actually, we're not using glyphicons, although they come with Bootstrap, so we can delete all of these glyphicon files right here. Beautiful. And like I said before, that Font Awesome is technically not a font, so it's going to be similar to the way we brought in fonts before, but it's also going to be a little different. So we have Font Awesome in our directory, so you should see it under fonts now. And let's go over here to get started. And we're going to use this easy default CSS. So We're going to copy the entire Font Awesome directory into our project, and now in the head of our HTML, we're going to reference the location to this fontawesome.min.css file. So go ahead and copy this. We'll go up here. This is our Google Arvo font. We'll have edit this comment and say and font awesome. Now include this font awesome, and let's go ahead and take down both of these. So we know it's in our fonts folder, and we're in the first site folder, so let's go ahead and say fonts, go in, and luckily we've named it Font Awesome. So now we found a Font Awesome folder. We're going to go into that. Now there's a CSS folder here with the Font Awesome. And then fontawesome.min. Beautiful. Save it. Now, what does it say to do? Check out the examples to start using Font Awesome. And the easiest way to make sure you included it correctly is just to grab this little icon right here with its opening and closing tags. And we're just going to put it, we want it above, we're going to be putting these icons above students, educators, and sponsors, as you can see here. So let's go ahead and put it above students right now. Paste it, save it, reload the page, and nice. You should have this icon right here. Okay, so now what do? Well, we want to find the right type of icon. So you have these icons right here. So let's click on this. And I like, when I come to Font Awesome, since there's so many icons to choose from, what I do is I do Control F. It brings up this little find bar up here. I'm sure on PC I do Command F on a Mac. On PC, I'm sure it's Control F. And I think of different words for the type of symbols we're looking for. So we're looking for students. So it could be student, no, not that. Could be person, no person. We got male, maybe. Oh, we got female right there. Sure, we have male somewhere too. Male, and also another common one is user. So we have user right here. And we could do users as well. So what this is, FA user. So we're going to come over here and we're going to change this FA camera retro to FA user. So save it, reload this page here, and now we have this user icon. Now, we have the right icon, and I want the icons to be white though with this dark gray circle around it. So we're going to come down here and you have all these examples. I'm under the examples tab here, and we have inline, larger, fixed width, list icons, bordered, spinning, rotate, stacked icons. Okay, this is what I'm looking for. This is new to the newest version of Font Awesome right here. And we are going to grab this span right here, and I'll talk to you about spans here in a second, but spans are just like divs, but spans help style inline elements. So we're going to bring this over here. Let's go ahead and push enter. Highlight these three, indent them in. Save it. Reload. All right, cool. So now we have this flag with this dark circle background here. And you can see how these are on the same line because icons, the I tags here, are inline elements. So we can go ahead and change this flag to user. Delete this up here. Oh, did the wrong thing. Delete this. There we go. Now reload it. All right, beautiful. So you have the user, you have a dark gray background. Now we want to change the size. In order to do that, go up here and you have different sizes of icons. So you have large, you have 2 times, 3x, 4x, 5x. So I want probably about this size, so we're going to go the 4x, which is fourth one down here, and we see it's 4x instead of LG. So we come back over here and see where it says LG. We're going to say 4x. Now, if we save it, come back over here, that is just the right size as this is over here. Awesome. So what we can do, since we know this looks good, we're going to go ahead and copy this. We should have 3 coming across the top now. And let's find the right icons for these two, for educators and sponsors. So let's go back up here to icons. Told you my little trick before. So we're looking for educators right now. So let's think, I doubt there's going to be educator. Nope. Doubt there's going to be teacher. Nope. What about school? No school. Pencil. All right. So obviously I knew it was going to be pencil, but I just want to show you how the thought process goes in on that. So we have pencil for that one. Oh, second one, sorry. One right above educators. And then for this one, I think it was dollar. Yep. Nope, money. You can see the money tab right there. So for a sponsor, we want them to give money. Maybe time would be another one. But we'll go with money. Save it. Reload the page. Nice. We have our icons. We know how to bring Font Awesome into any site we want, which this is actually a really powerful font here because you get like what would cost hundreds of dollars of professional icons from a graphic designer for free at your disposal, and it makes your site look very professional. And now I'm going to take some time to talk about spans. Let's talk about spans. So we talked about divs earlier, and divs help style block elements. Well, spans are just the version of divs for inline elements. So spans help style inline elements. So we saw that icons in the last lesson were inline elements. We also know that links are inline elements. Images are as well. But let's look at span up here. Span tag HTML W3 schools. So yeah, span tag is used to group inline elements in a document. Provides no visual change. It's just used to style them with CSS. So we can kind of come over here and look at how span helps style these two icons, which isn't going to, you're not going to understand too much because we haven't talked about different types of position yet or displays. So what I think will be easier for you to see is let's change some text here. So you see how up here our text was boldened. We talked about that earlier. Now let's change some text down here. Maybe you want to like emphasize 1 million lines right here. You want them to be like, whoa, we're doing 1 million lines, or awesome right here. So let's wrap this 1 million lines in a span. And let's give it class, we'll say emphasis. Or, yeah, emphasis is fine. And then we'll end the span right there. And just for the heck of it, let's do span class emphasis here with awesome. All right, save that. We're going to go to our custom CSS, and we're going to do a class of emphasis. So, any class of emphasis, and we'll just give the font a different color. Color, for now, we'll just do red. All right, save both those, reload the page, and nice. you see both of those are red there. Can also do font size. See, so big emphasis on that. And so you can use span classes to style inline elements. Let's go ahead and style this bottom section and make it look good. So if you still have the emphasis class for these for this text here, let's go ahead and put it back. So go over here, Sublime Text, delete this emphasis class right there, save it. And actually we're going to be using a lot, or working in index.html, custom.css a lot in these next couple lessons. So let's go ahead and go to View, go to Layout, 2 columns, slide that custom.css over. So now you have index.html, custom.css. Let's take out this span here, or these 2 spans. Save that, go back to Google Chrome, reload. All right, we're back to plain Jane. Now let's start styling this. So first thing we're going to do is bring in this get involved H2 here. And if you remember from the grid section, or the grid lesson, columns are the only thing that's allowed to be immediate child elements of rows. So you can tell this is true here. So instead of putting the H2 in between these 2 divs, we're going to put it right here. So let's go ahead and delete that. Put H2 get involved. While we're doing that, let's go ahead and change each of these H2s down here to H3s so that we can style them easier. Save that. Go back over here, reload the page. All right, now let's start by styling this get involved here. So let's take a look at what we got going on here. So we have a different color, different font family here, different font size, and this cool little text transform here. So let's go ahead and grab this color, and this is a hexadecimal color. So in previous lessons, I've been talking, color red, green, white, so words. Here, this is a hexadecimal value, and this is another way to choose a certain color. So copy this. Let's go ahead and inspect the element over here. Let's give it the same color. So we have that. We also know that this, from looking over here, is the same font as up here. So for our site, it's Arvo. And just to make sure, let's go ahead and inspect. Where did we put that? Here we go. Font family Arvo. Let's grab it here. Let's go back down here and inspect this element. Say font family. All right, so paste it in there. Font family Arvo, Courier, Serif. We know we want text align, center, and for now let's leave it at that. So let's come over here, and actually we know we want this whole div here centered by looking at it. So we want this whole div here centered by looking at it. And another thing I'm going to point out is that you see that the paragraph here and down here looks similar. Same with the H2 up here and up here looks similar. So I'm going to go ahead and give this div a class. Let me give this div, we have our first class of container, and to give it another div, another class, just push spacebar. Let's do get involved. And this is going to allow us to give this div a class of getInvolved, and then when we create this div up here, we'll give it the class of getInvolved, and its H2 tags and its paragraph tags will have the same styling. We won't have to rewrite the styling rules again. We'll just have them both as the same div class of, I'm sorry, not getInvolved, homepage. So homepage, and then we have everything in homepage needs to be centered. So dot homepage text align center. Now dot homepage H2. Let's look at the properties we gave it. So we gave it color, font family. We don't need text align. But what we can do is text transform. This is a pretty cool property, so we're going to tell it to make all letters uppercase. So we have these things. Just go ahead and, you can go ahead and copy them all. Copy, paste. We'll get rid of text align. Let's indent both of these. Save it. Let's reload this page. And nice. So we have everything centered here. Now let's go ahead and style these H3 tags here. So inspect these, and we could create our own style for them, but since we're building this 1 million line site or looking site out, we'll just go ahead and grab what we have over here. So font size is different than the last one. However, we still have to change font family, text transform, and uppercase. So, or I'm sorry, text transform and color. So we have text transform, we have color was E74C3C. And we have the same font family, which was Larvo, Courier, and Serif, correct? All right, so we have font size here of 24 pixels. Let's make it a little bigger. Let's go 26 pixels. Up here looks pretty good, 30 pixels. And that's they have for us. Let's just go ahead and make sure of that. Okay, so we can see the difference here. Now, let's grab the style. This is for all the H3s. So we're going to do dot homepage H3. Paste them in. Should work either way, but let's just make sure. Save it like that. Reload the page. All right, we're getting somewhere. Now, if you noticed, this homepage H2 and this homepage H3 has similar CSS properties here. Text transform uppercase, font family, Arvo, Courier, Serif, color, same. So we talked about it earlier, you can combine HTML selectors in one rule. So let's go ahead and do that. That way, if we want to change the color, we don't have to do it for both. We can just do it in one rule. So we'll do all H2s that are in a div with a class of homepage and all H3s that are in a div with a class of homepage. They have these three properties. All right, and let's keep that font size 30 pixels as we talked about before. Okay, so we can go ahead and delete those two. So all H2s and H3s with a div class of homepage have these properties here, and then they each have their individual font sizes. So save that. Shouldn't see any change. All right, now we're going to style this paragraph right here. So font size and font weight. We've talked about font weight before. Last time we did 100 up top here, but let's go higher than that. So let's go to 300, and then font size, currently paragraph is at not seeing it, so let's do 20 pixels. Close enough, 21 pixels. So save that, and we want all these paragraphs to look like that. So font weight 300, font size 21 pixels. And you know, you're starting to become real familiar with CSS rules and the selectors that go along with them. And as you can see, there's a bunch of different properties of text and fonts that we can play with, and I'll give a link to a list of those down below. Forgot to change the font weight. 300, boom. All right, beautiful. They're all lined up, looking good. The only thing we have left to do for right now in this lesson is to change this link color here. So let's inspect this element, and we just need to change the color, and it's the same color as the other two. So copy this, inspect that element, color. All right, beautiful. So any link in a div with a home page or a class of home page, let's give it that same color. Nice. So this section looks a lot like this section now. And next we will get into putting this line there. In this lesson, I want to insert this line into our Get Involved section down here. So there's different ways to do this, and for one, you would think, well, we could just use border bottom here on this H2, but the line is actually thinner or skinnier than the text, so that's not going to work. So what we're going to use is we're going to use what is called a horizontal rule. And let's go ahead and fix this H2 real quick so that's the right indentation here. Then let's put this HR tag in here. This is a horizontal rule. So let's see what that does. Let's reload the page. You can see this very vague line going across the page. And this is going to be nice and simple because Bootstrap actually does a lot of the styling for us. So you can see down here the styling it's done. So let's go ahead and make it the color of this text up here, which is, if we remember correctly, E74C3C. Oh, sorry. It's going to be border color because it's not text. This is a border. Border color E74C3C. All right, now we can do width. We'll do 20%. Let's do, and this width is relative to the div that it is within. So this div of class container homepage, which has a width of 1170 thanks to the container class. So we mess with this some, you can see the line getting a little bit skinnier. and that's because the percentage is relative to the div that it is within. So we actually won't use percentage on this. We're going to keep it consistent, and we'll use probably about 20 pixels. Nope, way more than that. Let's go 160 pixels. And then I also want the margin top. See, they've already given us a margin top down here of 20 pixels. Let's go 10 pixels. So let's go, actually, let's go 15 pixels. Yeah, that looks good there. Okay, so we have that going. A couple things to note is that Bootstrap's already done some styling of this horizontal rule for us. As you can look down here, it's done margin top, which we overruled, margin bottom. It's given it a border of 0. So what's usually the case is that, let me show you, without CSS doing the styling, this is what it looks like. And you can see how it's much thicker. And so what CSS is doing is say border of 0, so there's no border, but then it's saying the border top is 1 pixel solid and this color, which we're overriding right here with E74C3C. So we could say up here, we could say border top 1 pixel solid. All right, so we have that. And then also what I want you to see here is that this horizontal rule here is centered. And you may think it's because we've given this whole home page a text of line of center. But if we take away that center, this horizontal rule still stays here in the center. Why is that? This is because there's a different way between centering inline elements, which you do by text align center, than centering block elements. So this HR is actually a block element, just like divs are, H2s, paragraphs, and so on and so forth, ones that we've talked about. So in order to center a block element, well, first let me show you. So we've given it a margin top of 15 pixels. Let's go ahead and give it a margin all the way around of 15 pixels, and it mysteriously moves over here to the left. Okay, so we look down here at the box model, 15 pixels all the way around. Well, in order to center block elements, what you have to do is to give it a margin on the left and the margin on the right of auto. So one way to do that, and we'll just go ahead and exit this out and say margin. And remember, if you do 2 values, top and bottom is the first value and left and right is the second value. So we're just going to say auto, and now it's centered again. So now you know how to center block elements. It's got to have a margin left and a margin right of auto, and it will be centered in the div that it is within. Now let's just fix all this over here. Take it back to margin top, 15 pixels. Everything looks good, so we'll grab these 3. And then we'll say for all HRs and a div with a class of homepage, these are the CSS properties you want it to have. So we'll come over here, dot homepage, HR. Reload the page, and everything looks awesome. We overwrote the border top rule, and the margin top rule looks good. And we'll move on to styling or creating this who we are div. We have this get involved section looking good on our site so far. Now let's go ahead and bring in this who we are section and make it look good as well. So let's go over here to Sublime. And remember, we have this div class jumbotron for the top section. This is our get involved section here. So we're going to create a div right here in between the two. We're going to give it class container, and remember, container keeps the text all in this line on the sides so that it looks nice and aligned. And then We also talked about when we were creating this Get Involved section that there's similar styling elements between the H2s and the paragraphs between these two divs. So we gave it a class of homepage. So we're going to give this a class of homepage. Let's go ahead and close that div. First thing we're going to do is include that H2 that says who we are. And that horizontal rule. And we need to include a paragraph. What is that paragraph? We can go ahead and grab the text here. Copy it. Come over here, paste it in. Let's reload this page. All right, cool. So we got the H2 looking the same up here. Here we have the paragraphs looking the same. And just to give you a visual of what giving this a class of home page does, I'm going to go ahead and delete this real quick, save it, come back over here, and it's completely different now. So that's the beauty in using classes for divs so that we can style them all the same. Nice and uniform styling. Reload the page over here, and what are we missing? All right, so we're missing this link here. We want to wrap it around Massive Academy. Let's go back to Sublime. Remember, the A tag is how we create a link. Href attribute is where the user will go when they click on the link. So to do an absolute link, we do http www.massiveacademy.us. Let's go ahead and give it a target of _blank so that they go to a new tab and they click on it. We come over here, save it, reload this page. Beautiful, we have a link over there. All right, now let's put in this image. So let's just go ahead and grab it. We have Academy, brand, medium, desktop, first site, images. I'm going to copy this just so it's easier to grab later. Save it. You see it here in images, beautiful. And we should know how to do this now. So img tag, source, src, and it's from the index.html file. So we want the browser to go into images folder, look in it, go to academy _brand _medium. We got the alt attribute of Massive Academy. And we have the title attribute of Massive Academy. Save it. Come back over here. Beautiful. So we've just put up a new div, styled it, and all under a couple minutes. Awesome. Now let's go ahead and finish out these two sections here in the next lesson. Before we move on, I'd like to talk about links and with it what we call pseudo classes. So if you scroll over here to Massive Academy link here, you see that the styling changes. Well, why is this? So let's right click on this and inspect element. And if you come over here to this little dotted line box here, you can click on hover and see how this CSS class appears right here with extra CSS. So you have here, you have an A tag with :hover. So what this is, hover right here, is a pseudo class. And links come with this hover pseudo class, and there's other pseudo classes here in HTML. So you can see meet the pseudo class selectors, the CSS pseudo class here. And we can edit the styling of this pseudo class for this link. So how are we going to do that? Well, we've already styled links that are in a class of homepage. So we're going to add, you can combine pseudo classes with HTML selectors and classes. So dot homepage, A, and we're going to say hover. So anytime a link within a div that is class of homepage gets hovered over, these are the properties we want it to have. So we still want it to maintain that same color as before. And I also don't want it to have this underline here. So text decoration, none. And then we're going to use this opacity property here. And opacity is basically transparency. And it's on a scale from 0 to 1. And 1 is not transparent at all, and 0 is completely transparent. So it's just a shortcut to use to make a lighter version of the color you have. So let's save this. Now let's reload this page. So we have all our links here. Now if you hover over this link, you see no longer an underlined, and you also see a slightly lighter color, and that's the opacity coming into play. Same with down here. You also see down here that light gray background that appears because Bootstrap has already done some of that CSS for us with the button default. So button default, pseudo class hover, background color, border color, right there. All right, so now you know how to edit links and give them certain styling whenever you hover it, and you know what a pseudo class is. Now that we've styled these two sections correctly, let's go ahead and make this part of the site look a little more appealing to the eye. So what I mean by that is, if you can look over here at the 1 million line site, you see this change in background from here to this soft gray to this almost salmon color here. And what it does is it gives the site a more organized, sexy, professional look than this bland, all white right here. So how can we do that? Well, let's inspect this element and let's try something out. So let's highlight this div here and give it a background color. So background color, and we'll give it a hexadecimal value of F5, F5, F5. All right, so as you can tell, we have a problem. The background does not go the full width of the screen. Well, why is this? And the answer is simple. It's because it's within this container div right here. So the container limits the width of this div to 1170 pixels. And it doesn't go to the full edge of the page. Now, if you come up here, you're like, well, we did this background here, which is the full edge of the page. So what did we do differently up here? Well, this div right here with the class of jumbotron was outside of a container div. So the jumbotron div actually wraps the container div. So what we're going to do is create a div to wrap our container homepage div. So we're going to do a div here. And we have been using classes, but now we're going to use ID, and I'll explain in the next section the benefits of using ID and the differences between IDs and classes. So we got this div up here, and what we're going to need to do is push this div with a class of container homepage and indent it just to keep our code organized. And thanks to our code already being organized, I see that we've already wrapped the footer and that horizontal rule in that div container. So let's go ahead and cut this right here, and let's move it right down below this div. Beautiful. Now we can move these to the left. We have that. And now we're going to need to take this whole container div here, indent it. That way we can end this div here and our code stays organized. So save that. Come back to the page. All right. And since we took the footer and put it outside the container div, you can see it goes all the way to the edge of the screen. So now let's look at this div we just created with a class, or I'm sorry, with an ID of get involved. You can see it goes the full width of the screen, just like the jumbotron one does up here. So in these two cases, these divs are wrapping, are the parent element of the container div, so they're outside of it, and they're the child element of the body, which the body is the full width of the screen. So that's why these divs go to the full width of the screen. They're not limited in width at all by any other class or ID. So we have this here, and now let's try this background color. Beautiful. So let's go back over to our code, make that permanent. And I like to do my CSS where, these are HTML elements here at the top, and then I like to do any IDs I have. So here I'll do get involved, and you notice this hashtag here, that's the symbol in CSS for an ID, as we've been using the period as a symbol to show a class. So hashtag get involved, so it means any element with an ID of get involved. We're going to give it a background color of hexadecimal F5, F5, F5. And I'm just going to change this tab size to 2 so that everything's aligned correctly. So save that, reload the page, and we still have our background color. Awesome. All right, now I want to give these two sections some spacing here, clean up the site, give a little differentiation and make it look more organized. So both these sections are going to have about the same spacing. Let's go ahead and work on the class homepage. So we could give it margin top, I will say 30 pixels, margin bottom 30 pixels, but which makes this section look fine with the spacing. However, if we remember correctly, margin goes outside of the border. As you can see down here in the box model, if you ever forget, margin's outside of the border and padding's inside the border. So if we increase margin, this background color, soft gray here, doesn't get any larger. But if we change that margin, padding, you can see that background color increase, and then we'll change this margin. Beautiful. So you see that increase, and actually I need to move both of these, copy that, bring it down here and paste so that you can see it in both, nice, in both divs here. Awesome. So let's go ahead and add padding top and padding bottom. Padding top and padding bottom, the only reason they were crossed out down below is because I had it within the element style on this container. But we'll add padding top and padding bottom to the home page here. Padding bottom 30 pixels, padding top 30 pixels. Beautiful. Awesome. Spacing looks good. And now let's go ahead and finish out the site with the footer down here. In the past lesson, we used something we never used before. We used this ID right here. And we have been using classes the whole time. So let's take a look at the difference between IDs and classes. For that, let's use our friends over here at W3 Schools. And we're going to say okay, here we go. So we have ID and class selectors. Okay, so an ID selector. The ID selector is used to specify a style for a single unique element. And we have the ID selector uses the ID attribute of the HTML element is defined with a hashtag. So we've already gone through that. Class selector. The class selector is used to specify a style for a group of elements. Unlike the ID selector, the class selector is most often used in several elements. So what can we take from this? First of all, IDs are used for unique elements. Class selectors are used on multiple elements. So let's look at our code. So for instance, we have class container. So containers here as well. We have class homepage. Homepage is here as well. Class column medium 4. We use that a lot. So basically, whenever you are styling a certain HTML element, and it's going to have recurring styling elements. In other words, there's going to be another element. So say for a div, in this case, we'll say div, that's going to have similar styling elements to the current div you're working on. You want to give it a class. If it has unique styling elements, so there's not going to be any other HTML element. So for this, if there's no other div that's going to have the styling elements that we're going to put in this div, then you give it an ID, as we did here. So no other div we've talked about yet has this background color that the get involved div has, so we went ahead and gave it an ID. Now, number 2 is that earlier in the course, we talked about CSS specificity, and IDs are way more specific than classes. And so what does that mean? In other words, if you give something an ID, the CSS rules on that are going to take a much greater priority than a class. So let's go down here. Let's say this educators tag right here. I'm going to give it ID educator. Save that. Now I'm going to go up here, and remember we've said that any homepage H3 gets a font size of 26 pixels, also has this certain font family and this color. So I'm going to override both this font size and this color here. Font size 30 pixels, color black. Let's go ahead and say text transform under lowercase. All right, so we have this ID of educator, and then you have this class of homepage with any H3. So that's pretty specific. It's not only saying any class of homepage, it's also saying all H3s in that. Now let's go over here to our page and see what shows up. All right, so it's black. It's got the font size of 30 pixels, and it's lowercase. So you can see here that IDs take a much higher priority in CSS. So if you want to be real specific on something and make sure the styling's on it and it's a unique HTML element, give it an ID. Another benefit of an ID is linking. So this whole time, throughout the course, we've had these who are we links up here and the get involved link up here. You've probably been wondering when we're ever going to use it. So let's look at this now. First of all, get involved. So what I want to do is I want to link this link right here to this section right here. So if you've ever seen like on a site that has a real, what we call a tower page, so it's real tall, taller than this page we're creating, and they have these links up here, well, they don't want you to leave this page. So they put links to different sections of this page up here. So that's what we're doing. We want this get involved when you click on that to take us down here. So let's go over to our code, and we've given this div an ID of get involved. So what we can do is come up here and say hashtag get involved. So this is another type of link. We've talked about absolute links, where you start off with HTTP. We've talked about relative links, where you give it a path relative to where this link is in the file structure, and now we're giving it this ID link. So it tells us, what ID to go to on the page. So save this. Now let's go over here. Let's click this get involved, and it takes us down here. Now we'll make it so that's a smoother transition later, but for now, just know that that link's down here. Another just side note is that, say you had this get involved section on the grid.html document up there, so you could do this as well. So it doesn't have to be on the current page. But for now, we're going to keep it on this current page. Save that, And now let's do this who we are section. So let's indent this div here. Div ID equals who. In the div. So we're not going to give this any, specific styling here. We're just going to use it for the benefits of linking. So we're going to do hashtag who. Now we can come up here, reload the page, see it goes to who we are section. All right. So what can we take away from IDs and classes? Well, one, we want to use IDs when it's a unique HTML element. You're not going to have another one like it in terms of styling. We want to use classes when it's going to be repetitive styling. So you're going to have other HTML elements with similar styling attributes to that one. So you can use classes so that it's easy to change. All you got to do is make one change in CSS over here, and it applies to everything. Say we make a change in homepage, it applies to every div with a class of homepage or HTML element with a class of homepage. All right, and then IDs also come with this benefit of being able to link to certain parts of the page. All right, let's go ahead and finish this site out with a nice looking footer. So to do that, well, first I want to change back this educator. Save that. Take out educator. Over here, reload the page. Make sure everything looks good. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right, now for the footer. Well, first off, we're going to take out that horizontal rule. Now, let's go ahead and grab this image here. Save image as. We'll just say, we'll go ahead and copy this and save it here in the images. And instead of this paragraph here, we're going to have the image, source, still in that index file. So let's go ahead and say images and save that. Let's see what the site looks like over here. Beautiful. All right, so you can barely see the image down in here. So let's go ahead and style this footer here. And one thing I forgot to do is to actually wrap this in a container. So div class equals container, and we're not putting it in the footer here in this div. So we could say class container here, but we're going to be making that footer have a certain background color. We want it to go all the way to the edges, so we're going to wrap the div class container with the footer. And this footer HTML tag here is just like saying div class footer, and HTML5, since footer is so common in websites, they made its own HTML element. So we have that. Save it. Let's reload the page over here, and now you see it. This image is now in line. And so let's come down here, and we want to give it a background color of our F74 C3C color. And let's give it a padding top of, let's give it 150 pixels, padding bottom 30 pixels. Beautiful. And copy this. Come over here, footer, paste, indent these, save it. And nice. So it looks good. The only problem we have is this little whiteness down here, and where that's coming from is body, padding bottom. So let's remove this line, save it, reload the page, and nice, congratulations. We have our first website. Okay, so the site looks awesome right here on our laptop, okay? but we want it to look good across all devices. And doing this is called making our site responsive. So it's responsive to the screen width. So that way it's going to look good on not only our laptop, but it's also going to look good on tablets, so iPads, whatever other tablets, and then mobile devices as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here to CSS in Bootstrap so that I can show you. And we talked earlier about how Bootstrap's built on a grid system. Well, one way Bootstrap is responsive naturally, as you can see it change, as we change the screen width, see it just change right there? Changes again, this comes up, is that Bootstrap has responsiveness built into it. And the way to make your site responsive is to give it media queries. All right, so here's the media queries that Bootstrap uses. Right now, we're at a medium width screen. So this is for desktops 992 pixels and up, and you could also go for large desktops 1200 pixels and up. And then it has a media query at 768. So you'll see it change right when it gets below 992, and now you're in this small region. And then you'll see it change right when it gets below 768, and you're in this extra small region. So let's see this live in action. So go ahead and inspect the element here. And now, as I move, minimize the screen width, you can see the width up here coming up. So what did we say? I think it was 992. So 1200, 992, 768. 1200, you'll see it pop in, boom. And you're going to see it pop in at 992, around here. And then you're going to see it change again at, I think we said 768. All right, so what we're going to do in this lesson is put in, code changes so that it looks good across all screen resolutions. So let's go right here and let's start making it look good. I think it looks good. So changes at 1200 all the way to like 992. And like we said in the earlier episodes, the earlier lessons, we want to keep all this above the fold. So we want to move this up. So we're going to take this and inspect this element. Font size. Right now it is font size 63 pixels, so let's say 56 pixels. And then I also think it'll help take down this margin bottom just a little bit. All right, I like the way that looks. So what do we change? We change font size and margin bottom for the H1. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here to Bootstrap and we're going to grab this right here. Actually, let's go ahead and grab that. Remember how to do CSS comments. So we're going to put right here responsive styling. All right, and we're going to change this to max width. And the max width is going to be right below 1200 pixels. So 1199 pixels. And then we're going to take all this, enter down. And what did we change? We changed the jumbotron H1 font size to 56 pixels. and margin bottom 30 pixels. Save that, reload this page. Nice. You can see it overwriting here. So 56 pixels. Everything else looks good. Now let's go. We've done for medium devices. Now let's go and do it for small devices, which is tablets. So it's going to be everything from 991 to 768. So 991, 768, and I like to go to the smallest number just to make sure it's going to look good on it on the full width. So 768, perfect. Now we're going to change this again because, as we said before, we want everything above the fold. And above the fold is what you see when you initially land on the page. So everything from here up. Now let's change this font size. And I'm going to change it till we have 3 lines. Boom. Say 44 pixels. Let's give this margin bottom. Actually, keep that margin bottom there. I kind of like that. And now let's look at this paragraph, because earlier we put some padding on it. I want to take that away. Beautiful. So right there at 10 pixels looks good. Let's check everything out. Looks good, looks good. Let's see this here. Okay, so what I want to do, and you'll notice when we made that switch here into the smaller range of 768 pixels to 991 pixels, that these columns change. So right when we get above 991, now we have 3 columns or 3 divs that are 4 columns wide in terms of the grid system. But boom, once we get into that small range, it goes back to there's only 1 in terms of width. There we go. And that has to do with this MD here, as I talked about earlier, and that's to discuss in a later lesson. But for now, what I want to do is I want to give each of these a little more spacing in between the two. So let's check this out. Padding tap, 20 pixels. Padding bottom, 20 pixels. Actually, once I apply it to all of them, let's go ahead and check it out. Then it should be enough spacing. Yeah. So these two look good and spaced apart. So padding top, padding bottom, 20 pixels. So we're going to do the same thing we did here. Grab this. But max width now is going to be what, 991? Because it's right below 992. Yep, 991. And that jumbotron, we made changes to it, the H1. Changes did we make? 44 pixels. Font size, 44 pixels. Margin bottom, still 30. We also made changes to the paragraph tag and jumbotron. We gave it padding 010. Then we did, or I'm going to do, in order to get each of these divs here to have the same padding top bottom of 20 pixels. We're going to do div. So we're going to do hashtag who, because that's what, or sorry, ID of get involved. And for within the div with an ID of get involved, each column medium 4 div will have padding top 20 pixels and padding all right, now let's reload this page and everything looks good. So we've done, yep, everything looks great. So we've done small, medium, and large, and now let's go on to extra small. So once again, inspect element. And extra small is just below 768. So I'm going to go to as skinny as possible, 400 pixels. And we're going to make this .24. Let's check out the paragraph. Font size, I think it is currently 21 pixels. Yep, so let's make that a lot smaller. Let's make it 15 and padding 0. And let's change this button large. That looks good there, 18 pixels. Now let's scroll down, everything looks good there. Let's actually make pixels. It'll still be 18. Nice, nice. And let's change this actually to have a width of 90%. 80%. Beautiful. All right. Paste this just as we did last time. Max width this time is going to be what? 767 pixels. We're going to have footer. Actually, the image in the footer. And what do we change this to? We have the jumbotron, the H1 font size 24. Beautiful. We still kept that margin bottom. We changed the paragraph to have 0 padding. And the font size to be 15. Let's go ahead and make it 16. And we don't need this anymore because it's already above. Change button large. A font size of 18 pixels. And we change the homepage paragraph to have a font size of 18 pixels. I think that's all the changes we made. So let's save this, reload the page. Everything looks the same. Beautiful. Yes, nice. All right, so now it looks good across all devices. You can see it change with each hit. Nice, nice. We're good to go. One thing is, oh, okay. So earlier I told you to ignore these files down here. This is the Bootstrap core JavaScript, as you can see from the comment here. And what we're going to do right here, and this will lead us to be able to do a lot more things, is correctly link to the JavaScript document. Remember, we had to delete this earlier on the at the very beginning of the course in the CSS up here, how they had this, you know, dot 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 slash dot 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 slash DST. So we're going to delete this, and now it's saying look for JavaScript, the JS file or JS folder, go into it, and bootstrap min.js. So reload the page, and now when you click that, you should have functionality where this drops down. So that's cool. And let's clean up some other stuff real quick. Let's go up here and let's go ahead and put this title. You can put it at whatever you want. You can put it at my first website, whatever. I'm going to do 1 million lines. And you can see the title changed up here. And one more thing, just so you can see the cascading nature of this. So the way this CSS style works is, you know, you have jumbotron.h1 right here, okay? And it gives you the styling for it, okay? And then, and the jumbotron p, all this right here, button marge. And basically, so it has that written in. Now you go down the document, it's saying, oh, now for jumbotron.h1, it's going to be these CSS rules, as long as the screen is no wider than 1199 pixels. So it adopts these CSS rules and it overwrites the previous ones. And then here, it's like, oh, well, if the screen's less than 991, now it's going to overwrite this font size 56 with this 44 pixels. All right, so you can see the cascading nature that you put these lower in the document, they overwrite the previous statements. So when we inspect this element, you can see it all being overwritten. So 24 overwrites the 44, which overwrote the 56, and so on and so forth. So you can see the cascading nature of the CSS coming in effect with responsive design. And our site is now officially done. It looks great across all devices. Awesome job, guys. And now we're going to put it live and online.